Attention all pharmacy industry professionals. This isn't your grandfather's podcast. This is...
What the hell are you talking about? Our grandfathers never even listened to podcasts. The internet wasn't even around.
Shut your pie hole. My grandfather loves podcasts, and so does my maca.
Your what?
This is the RX Rated Podcast, part of the Pharmacy Podcast Network.
Did you say maca?
Put the fidget spinners away. Punch in the coordinates for the jump to light speed. And do or do not. There is no try.
What kind of asshat introduction is this?
The podcast dedicated to all the pharmacy professionals in this crazy sector of healthcare.
What was that?
The RX Rated Podcast.
Dude, seriously? You already said that 3 other times. This is bullshit.
Welcome to the RX Rated Podcast. This is your host, Dr. Jeffrey Wenger, and with me as always is my esteemed colleague, Dr. Maurice Robinson, the Doctor of Comedy. How are you, sir?
I'm pretty good. The question is, how are you with the election and everything that's going on?
I am cautiously optimistic. I know in the last episode, I made some bold predictions. And this is funny because I have a bet with my cousin who lives in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I bet him 10-1 that Trump was going to win. So if I win, I only get $100. If he wins, he gets $1,000. But no one said anything about cheating. So if it turns out Biden won because the system was rigged, well, then I'm not paying up because I don't think cheaters should win.
That's funny. I always say if Biden does win, the first thing he should do is give all of my Republican friends, which I have a lot of, free mental health counseling because they have been going crazy on Facebook.
Well, it's funny you mention that because when Trump won, a lot of people did seek counseling. A lot of the left-wingers were distraught. I mean, you've probably seen those viral videos of that girl screaming in the streets and Trump derangement syndrome. It's a real phenomenon, and they were distraught. Conservatives are like, well, that sucks, but I have to work tomorrow, so. Not to imply that left-wingers are a bunch of unemployed mama's boys that live in their parents' basement, but anyway, speaking of the election, glad you brought that up. So I wanted to run down a few things because, as you can imagine, I have a lot of opinions on what's been going on. We live in interesting times, don't we? I remember Elizabeth Warren and Hillary Clinton and all these people on the Democrat ticket castigating, I guess is the proper word, the Electoral College. They want to do away with the Electoral College because Hillary lost. And she got more of the popular vote, but Electoral College gave it to Trump, and they all want to do away with it. And I said, as soon as they said that, I said to myself, yeah, until you guys win vis-a-vis the Electoral College, then it'll be the greatest thing ever. But I don't know how many Americans really understand how the Electoral College works or even what it is. So it was designed to make cheating harder, basically, because like we talked about in the last episode, if it was a straight up democracy, then you would just pander to California with their 55 electoral votes, and you would pander to New York and Florida and some of the bigger states, Texas, and you couldn't care less what people in Ohio, well, maybe not Ohio, but some of these bumfuck states like Iowa, like the middle of nowhere, Alaska only has 3 electoral votes. Like no one would give a shit about them. The forefathers didn't want that. They wanted everybody to have a say. So that's why you have 2 senators from every state, but then you have the House of Representatives based on population. So they tried to make the fairest system possible. So in the Electoral College, you have what's phase 1, which is basically pure democracy, like we were talking about. Phase 1 is pure democracy. Everybody votes. But they're not really voting for the Republican candidate or the Democrat candidate. They're basically voting for electors, which are Democrat or Republican. And then phase 2 happens in December, and that's when the electors vote for who's going to be president. And there's 270 electoral votes that are needed, that are required to be president, but there are 538 electors, and they are the ones that do their thing in December. So right now you keep hearing about NPR and everybody's referring to Biden as president-elect. Biden is not president-elect. The electors haven't even done their thing yet. So the mainstream media is lying when they say Biden is president-elect. By the way, just as a side note, Kamala Harris is not the first minority VP. Herbert Hoover's VP back in the day was a Native American Indian. So just thought, a little golden nugget of trivia there if you want to share that with your friends at the next party. But I like the New York Times, who said, here's a direct quote from the New York Times, which is unbiased. They're impartial for sure. They said that the role of declaring the winner of a presidential election in the United States falls to the news media. No, it doesn't. What a brazen thing to say, but what would you expect other, the New York Times, so, and then I mentioned NPR already. Here's a direct quote from NPR, who didn't want to admit that they were hiding the Biden scandals. They said, we don't want to waste listeners or readers' time. So all this Hunter Biden stuff you heard about the laptop and all these China connections and the Ukraine, they won't even talk about it because they don't want to waste their listeners and their readers' time. Like, can you just smell the bias in the air? It's unbelievable. They believed Dr. Ford when she came out against the Supreme Court nominee. What was his name? I'm blanking on his name. But so they believed her. She had no witnesses, no corroborating evidence, like no evidence of any kind. But they won't believe Tony Bobulinski, who is a former Biden business partner who met with the FBI regarding all these China deals. They won't believe him for a second, but they'll believe Dr. Ford. So what happened on election night? Well, in Michigan, there were 7 voters older than the oldest human being alive today who voted, including one man who was born in 1850. Plus, in Michigan, they were boarding up the windows. You can go to YouTube. You'll see video of them boarding up the windows. Why were they doing that? They're supposed to be people that are able to witness the poll counting. I think they're called poll observers. Like, for instance, in Philadelphia, the poll observers were left out. They weren't even allowed in the room. In Detroit, there were 2,503 dead people who were registered. 32,519 more than were eligible to vote, and 4,788 duplicate registrations. So, and then, like, this has been going on for a long time. I've been following politics. I'm older than you. I just turned 49 recently. I've been following politics since I was in my mid-20s, and there's always been voter fraud. And for some reason, it's always been favorable to the Democrats. Anytime a dead person votes, they vote Democrat. It's been going on for decades. But the one unique thing about this election was that Trump got more minority votes as a Republican candidate than anyone's in the Republican Party since 1960. That was impressive. He got a lot of Latino and Black voters. Were you aware of that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so good for him. He had a lot of rappers. I kept a list of all the rappers' names. I don't have it with me in front of me, but you got Ice Cube, and 50 Cent was sort of wishy-washy. But there was Lil Pump and all kinds of guys. I couldn't believe how many rappers came out supporting Trump. That was fun. Then you got this thing called the Dominion voting systems, which quote unquote glitched in favor of Biden. Here we go again. Never glitches in favor of a Republican candidate. It only glitches in one direction. This Dominion voting system was used in 29 states. And from what I've read, they were partnered up with the Clinton Global Initiative and had on staff former employees of both the Clinton Growth Initiative and the Clinton Cash Cow Teneo, which is a communications and advisory firm. So I guess I don't want to get too deep into this stuff because people are going to zone out, but let me just quote a great communist dictator named Joseph Stalin. Here's what he said. Those who cast the votes decide nothing. Those who count the votes decide everything. I rest my case. But there's more. I mean, you got Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania.
Those mail-in ballots.
Go ahead.
It's like I went to sleep and it was like, he was winning those states, and then they started counting those mail-in ballots, and then I woke up, the state was blue.
Exactly. Those states were bright red on election night, and then we woke up to 100,000 plus votes, all for Biden, not a single one for Trump. That is statistically impossible. So, and then there's like some places that just stopped counting. Like, I didn't know that was a thing. Like, how can you just stop counting? we'll pick it up in the morning, folks. No, you keep counting until you figure out who won. And then there was something called Sharpie Gate, which happened in Arizona. They were handing out, when I went to vote, they gave me a pen. Apparently in Arizona, people were being handed Sharpies. Well, the machines don't detect Sharpie ink. So all those people that got Sharpies, their votes weren't counted. In Michigan, Biden got a 200,000 vote increase. Trump got 0. It reminds me of when Al Franken won. Remember Al Franken, the comedian from SNL? And then he ran, I think it was in Minnesota. And he won only because they found a bunch of votes for him in a trunk of a car. I mean, this stuff's been going on for a long time. California called, they called the state of California for Biden 8 minutes after the polls closed. 8 minutes. Meanwhile, we got Nevada is like taking their sweet ass time counting the votes. And then you saw this famous meme of these two trajectories, one for Biden, one for Trump. And then you see the spike straight up at a 90-degree angle for Biden. That was Wisconsin. That meme's been going around. It's viral at this point. And this doesn't include all the big tech censorship that went on with Facebook and Twitter, where they were censoring even Trump himself, much less his White House press secretary and anybody conservative. And I never saw any of these warnings like, oh, this may be missing with anyone on the left. It's just Trump is fighting an uphill battle. He's battling the mainstream media. He's battling big tech companies. He's battling the academia, Hollywood. I mean, the list goes on. It's unbelievable. Same thing happened when George W. Bush ran against Gore and then later against John Kerry. This kind of shit has been going. The thing about this election is that they cheated so egregiously that it's obvious and everybody knows it. And it's just, it's gone to absurd levels and they can't even hide it anymore. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. This election ain't over yet. For those of you who are right-wingers and you're despondent and you're down and you're depressed, hang in there. It ain't over yet, folks.
You think if they would have said that Trump won or was, predicted to win like they kind of did with Biden, do you think there would have been a lot of protests and looting?
I think that prior to election night, when Washington, D.C. was boarding up everything, they were afraid that Biden was going to lose and that the Antifa people were going to be out in the streets like they have been for the last 6 months or so, burning shit down. And last night we had the Million MAGA March in D.C. And sure enough, as soon as the sun went down and it got dark, they started beating the shit out of Trump supporters in the streets. All these videos are on YouTube. You can see the shit. It's all over the place. It's on Twitter. It's viral. All these Antifa, Black Lives Matter people just beating the shit out of Trump supporters. It's a one-way street. Everybody talks about the right and being violent. Like, no, when we thought Biden won, we didn't go out and riot in the streets. There was no violence. We're still pretty calm to this day. We're letting the system work. They're filing lawsuits. We're going to figure this shit out. It'll probably go to the Supreme Court at some point, but I don't see any right-wingers out in the streets burning shit down. It's only the left-wing Antifa people that are doing it. Am I wrong?
No. The one thing I hope, if Trump does lose it, the Biden administration will take over. I know Trump was trying to lower drug prices through PBM reform and stuff like that, eliminating those kickbacks. So I hope that's something, whoever becomes president, that continues.
You know what breaks my heart about all of this is that Trump said that he was going to try to reform the education system and teach American exceptionalism. Because since I graduated high school back in the 80s, it's been the Howard Zinn version of American history, where we're the worst country and we're racist and we're evil and we have systemic racism. Biden even said that in one of the debates. He believes in systemic racism. Like, we've been teaching a couple of generation of kids now to hate their own country, and well, this is what you get. You get a bunch of 20-somethings rioting in the streets, trying to pull down statues and burn down police stations, and like, let's all take a step back. America is a great country. We're the least racist country in the world, in my opinion. We're like we said in the last show, like, where would you rather be gay than America? Where would you rather be a woman than in America? Like, we got to stop self-flagellating and just take a pause and say, okay, yeah, we had slavery. Everybody had slavery. There's not a corner of the globe that never had slavery at some point. Even the Native American Indians had slavery. Who were the first people to put an end to that shit? Great Britain and America, Western civilization said, all right, we got to stop this crap. We gave women the vote, women's suffrage. Women are treated like dogs in some parts of the world. I mean, it's
your knowledge of history kind of reminds me of my dad. My dad is probably like one of the smartest people I know. Like yesterday, he called me in the middle of the night. He's like, people always say that the Roman Empire fell. It didn't fall. Rome fell, but they had moved the headquarters to Constantinople. So Rome didn't fall as an empire. It was just this. I'm like, well, it's fucking 2:00 in the morning.
It's funny that you say that because my father was a high school history teacher for many years, and that's where I get it from. When I was growing up in Florida, starting at the age of 12, he had a lawn business. My dad worked 3 jobs when I was a kid. I hardly ever saw the guy, but when I was old enough to help him with his lawn business, we would go out in those hot summer days in Florida and mow the lawn, and he would play for me tapes of American history, and he was trying to educate me, and that's where I got it from. And the thing is, I never appreciated it at the time. It wasn't until I moved away to pharmacy school, I read a book by Joseph J. Ellis titled Founding Brothers, and that totally turned me around. As soon as I read that book, I'm like, holy shit, all right, I'm on board. The forefathers were actually pretty good guys. You know, they weren't infallible, but that's what makes what they accomplished all the more impressive, because they were fallible, and yet look what they did. Because I grew up in the 80s with George Carlin, and he said in one of his stand-up routines, America was founded by slave owners who wanted to be free, and he was trying to point out their hypocrisy. What a gross oversimplification of the time. It's like 200 years from now, people say, you had pets? You had dogs as pets? What kind of human being do you think you are that you had dogs as pets? That's okay, everybody, that was the state of the world back then. The world was a brutal place back then. Our forefathers were some of the first ones to say, all right, this is wrong. Well, you should stop this shit. And they didn't solve that problem in their time. They wanted to, they just couldn't and maintain a union because they would never get all the states to agree. So it wasn't until Lincoln came along that we had to fight a fucking civil war. And what was it? 600,000 Americans had to die to win that war. And we finally, eventually did away with that bullshit. And that wasn't enough because Jim Crow laws, which were Democrats, the Civil Rights Act was eventually passed in the 60s, majority Republican. So I'm just saying, folks, don't buy the BS that the mainstream media is feeding you. You got to do your own homework. You got to read unbiased history, primary sources. I don't know, it's tough. It's hard to know sometimes what's true and what's false and what's right and what's wrong because there's a lot of dishonest shit out there, and you gotta do your homework. And unfortunately, most Americans don't want to do their due diligence and study about what really happened. It's hard to put things in perspective. You can't judge the past based on current day values, right? We sit here comfortably in 2020 and we go, oh, you guys are horrible. Like, no, you got to put yourself back in 1776 and realize what the state of the world was like back then. They did the best they could. They fought the strongest government at the time, the British Empire. They had the greatest navy. I mean, we accomplished some amazing things. Okay, we didn't solve the slavery problem. It's like getting mad at Tesla for inventing AC currents or getting mad at Edison for inventing the phonograph and the sonograph. And like, oh, but you didn't cure cancer. It's like, okay, you got to put shit in perspective, everybody. All right, I'll get off my high horse.
Well, I will not be putting myself in 1776. That I will not be doing.
You are a funny dude. By the way, I got to compliment you on your when your pharmacy coworkers don't do anything at work video on YouTube. That was one of the funniest that is your funniest video to date, but that was one of the funniest things I've seen in years. I was laughing my ass off.
Yeah, I don't know, because like every time I make a video, I think it's like, okay, I can't think of anything else because pharmacy is really not that broad of a topic. And then some other shit just pops in my head randomly. My next video is going to be, what is it like to have a district leader or manager?
That's what makes it so funny, is because it's true. that's what makes comedy so humorous, is when it's relatable. And watching that, I've worked with people like that, and it is so fucking true. It's like, I don't ever do shit at work. So I need that song. I want that song.
Yeah, everybody's been like, can you upload the song? Can you upload the
Yeah.
song?
Well, speaking of pharmacy, I want to talk about my recent firing. I am currently unemployed. I got fired by, I won't say their name, but we'll say it's one of CVS's primary competitors. So let me give you a little background on my experience at this company. I started out as a tech to get my foot in the door. I worked 4 months as a tech. Then I volunteered to cashier at the front end register on Christmas Day, 2018. All just to make an impression, like I'm a good worker, I'm reliable, I'm willing to go the extra mile. I come in early, I stay late. Give me a shot. Just give me a shot. So I interviewed for a job that was 45 minutes away from my house, and I worked there for 1.5 years. And the commute was killing me, but you do what you got to do, right? The metrics there improved drastically from the previous year, because when you print out the metrics, you can see the previous year. I got along with all the techs, all the designated hitters, the front store personnel, all the ancillary staff, and the customers. Everybody loved me. No one liked the pharmacy manager. In fact, he had a lot of customer complaints. The designated hitters hated him. In fact, one was wanting to transfer out of the store because they just did not like working with him. Some floaters I spoke to had passed on the job that I got because they knew he was the manager there and they didn't want to work with him. He's notorious. The new store manager came in just a few months before I got fired. He knew the guy's reputation. So I got a call from the board of pharmacy because they wanted to know why I had been fired. And apparently this company's emails explaining that weren't clear. And I told the pharmacy inspector, well, here's what happened. And she knew the guy. And she said, I got a bad vibe off him from the start. He's disorganized, unable to multitask, messy, poor time management, et cetera, et cetera. The thing that did me in is, because my philosophy was keep your head low, keep your mouth shut, stay under the radar. But I couldn't do it anymore. He was verbally and even physically assaulting our lead tech, who is in her 60s. Very frail, older woman. He just didn't like her. And I felt like I had to speak up. And I knew I was taking a risk doing that. And he tried to blame her for everything. Every time something went wrong, he was trying to blame her. He gave her a poor review after all this came out. And he wrote her up, which I would describe as retribution, which the company ostensibly frowns upon. Right, just like they frown upon physical and verbal abuse. So my white privilege didn't kick in. I was the one that ended up getting let go. He's still there. He's a Middle Eastern guy. I guess they want to keep their minority numbers up. I don't know what it was. I don't want to play the race card. I'm just saying, this guy, no one likes him. No one likes working with him. He doesn't know how to talk to people. He's not a good manager. He can't manage time. He's messy as hell. And he's taking it out on the lead tech who's still there. I'm not there to defend her anymore. And it's just unfortunate that this company is so gutless that they'd rather get rid of me because it's easier, because I raised my voice. I raised the issue. I'm causing waves. Let's just get rid of him. We'll keep the bad apple. And I'm just waiting for the day to come when the bad apple, his time, I mean, he'll get his comeuppance. It's inevitable because he's a piece of garbage human being. And as soon as that happens, I'll let you guys know. But yeah, that's what happened to me. So I am currently retired. Let's put it that way.
So when you say every prescription filled is one step closer to retirement, did you think that you?
I'm there, baby.
What was the last prescription that you filled?
I don't remember, but it was a Sunday. I had just gotten back from vacation. I was on vacation for a good 10 days, almost 2 weeks. And I came back, worked on Sunday, and they let me go Sunday after my shift. And part of me was like, I can't believe you guys are doing this. Part of me was like, thank you. I couldn't stand working here another day. So it was a mixed bag. But let's just say that psychologically, I feel much better not having to deal with all that freaking stress. I can't imagine what's going on there now with all the flu shots, and he doesn't have me anymore because I pulled a lot of weights. He left a lot. He delegated a lot of things to me that quite frankly, he should do because he's lazy. And he's the kind of guy who would leave a stack of transfers from a company and say, are we supposed to transfer these? And they're on transfer pads. Like, how else would you interpret that? Yes, these need to be transferred. He just simply, clearly didn't want to do it and left it for me. There was stuff like that all day long. Express Scripts' phone number is 1-800-922-1557. Every pharmacist knows that number. He said he called that number for a transfer and didn't get a ring or a response. Like, that's a bunch of crap. That phone number has been in 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for the last, I don't know how many decades. Clearly just a lazy piece of shit that didn't want to work. And now I'm just waiting for his comeuppance, and we'll see what happens. I'll keep you posted, but I can't imagine him lasting.
You know what I think you should do?
What's that?
I think you should, on this podcast, tell us how you really feel about him.
The worst thing about him was the hypocrisy. He was just a total hypocrite. He would get on you for stuff that he was most to blame for. Hey guys, when we get vaccines, you got to refrigerate it. We wasted $2,500 worth of vaccines because no one refrigerated it. Okay, well, when they were delivered, who signed for it? Oh, it turns out he signed for it. Well, in my book, whoever signs for it should be responsible for putting it in the goddamn refrigerator. Why did you sign for it, fail to put it in the refrigerator, and then blame everybody else? It's just shit like that all day long. Have you ever tried to work with a blatant hypocrite? I'm like Clint Eastwood in Heartbreak Ridge. You can lie to me. You can steal from me. You can beat me. Just don't be a hypocrite. I hate hypocrites. I hate hypocrisy. It's my pet peeve.
Yeah, I've kind of been in charge most of my pharmacy career, so it's like I've avoided a lot of those. But I think that's why I like to be in charge, because I don't like to have other people blame me for stuff, but they don't do it.
I've been a pharmacy manager several times in the past and never had any problems like that. You just, it's tough, but you do it. I understand delegating authority. Okay, I need you guys to do this and I need you to do that. That's fine, but don't stand there at the computer staring at metrics all day long, neglecting the promised wait time, and then bitch about us about not meeting promised wait time metrics. You're the only one who doesn't meet promised wait time metrics. I bust my ass to get those prescriptions filled before the promised wait time. And then you're going to come to me and bitch about promised wait time metrics when you're the one dropping that ball? It was stuff like that constantly. I couldn't stand working with that guy. So before we go, I just want to tell the listeners, please leave comments and ask questions. And if you have questions for Siri that you think are good, put those in there. And I saw that you have T-shirts for sale and some other stuff. I like the grumpy one with I'm a grumpy pharmacist with a picture of Grumpy on there. Tell me more about like the stuff you're promoting.
People just ask me to make shirts, and so just come up with funny ideas because more people want to wear like pharmacy-related shirts. So I have one that's like PTSD, pharmacy telephone stress disorder, with a picture of a phone. It says 6 pharmacy calls. One that says I used to be a people person until I worked retail pharmacy. Expired retail pharmacist. And then there's one with a peace sign and it says retail pharmacy. That was kind of just for me. Peace out, retail.
And in closing, I just want to real quickly talk about the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine. I don't have much to say about it, but
the Pfizer CEO sold all of his shares of his stocks.
Oh, yeah. That's right. I remember. That's true. Wonder why he did that. I got this from the Mayo Clinic, which is a pretty good source. They say it's safe. There are certain things you have to look for in a vaccine. Safety, long-term protection. Does it protect people over the age of 50? Then there's different types of vaccines. I don't know which one this is yet. I don't know if it's a live vaccine, if it's an inactivated vaccine, a genetically engineered one. Typically, you have to test animals, then you test humans, and then you have to produce it, and then you got to distribute it, and then you got to administer it. Apparently, Trump has something in play called Operation Warp Speed, where they're trying to get it out there fast, in other words. They spent $10 billion on Operation Warp Speed, and they've got the Department of Health involved, Department of Human Services, CDC, National Institutes of Health, the Biomedical Advanced Research Department, the Development and Authority Department, the DOD, Department of Defense, Department of Agriculture, Energy, Veteran Affairs. I mean, this is a huge government outtaking. Is that the right word? So I appreciate the fact that they're trying to get this out there as soon as possible. I, for one, am tired of wearing these goddamn masks. So I hope they get it done sooner rather than later. But is there anything else we want to say to the folks before we sign off?
No, I think we exhausted them.
All right, everybody. Thank you for listening. And as always, just remember, every prescription you fill is one more closer to retirement.
And now you could even get that on a shirt.
Hell yeah, I'm going to get one.
Hello, it's your drug dealer. I thought I'd call in case you needed anything at all. You know, you can always call me just to talk, but I mostly want to sell you drugs. Drug dealer.